Well, hell yeah. Welcome to the Center for Indigenous Midwifery's podcast. Our mission is strengthening community by honoring, supporting, and reclaiming Indigenous midwifery care and culturally centered family support. For more information on our programming, visit indigenous-midwifery.org, find us on social media, or tune in for a live Zoomcast offered each month. Thank you so much for listening.
Welcome. Thank you, Rhonda, for inviting me and having me for the Zoomcast. My name is Vanessa Lovejoy-Guron. I am Filipino, and this is our Queering the Fertility Story podcast, Zoomcast. I just first of all honored that Rhonda asked me to come share. My wife and I have been married we met in 2004, got married in 2006. But first, let's just sit and breathe. Let me get settled. Just grateful for this work, grateful for this journey. Grateful for the Duwamish people where I live on their land. I'm a guest. This is my land acknowledgement for the past, present, and future of the Duwamish people. Thank you. First of all, I got a haircut because I could not be shaggy for this Zoomcast. And I just ran over and got one, and I came back home and I got it all together. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. I'm going to talk about our journey as far as we knew we wanted to have babies. How are we going to get these babies? How are we going to make these babies? And then how are we going to become parents? The first half of this is my wife's story. It's Erin's story. She felt really called to be pregnant. Really called, like there was no question in our minds that she was going to carry our first baby. And for a long time, that wasn't ever something I thought about, carrying, being pregnant, having a baby, but that was something she was really called to do. And at the time, she was in her early 30s, 30, 33. We were together for many years before we knew we were ready to welcome children in our lives. And we did look at adoption, for a long time. Read all the books, talked to all the people we knew in our lives, how they made their family. I think that was really important. And I think that's why for us, it was such a slow journey, wanting to see what was the right path for us to take. And I remember we went on a cruise. I know people, we're lazy vacationers, so the cruise was like the perfect thing. We just sit on a boat and just being told what to do. And I remember she took two books. She took an adoption book, and she took a book about adoption and a book about tracking your fertility. And after kind of going through the book about adoption through this little vacation, when we came back from this week-long cruise, we knew we were going to go this route and start thinking about, okay, sperm banks, tracking her cycle and all of that. And it was nice to be like, this is what we're going to do, and just move forward. And there was no question it was going to be her. She's a year older than me. And I have, now that I'm a full spectrum doula, I work with a lot of, queer couples that, a lot of times that happens to be how people figure it out, like who's older, and maybe they carry first, just so they have that chance. And so, yeah, she's only a year older than me, but she felt really called to be pregnant first. And let me tell you, the first thing was the sticker price of sperm. So expensive. And, we were a two-income family by then. She just finished grad school. I'd been working in my previous industry for a handful of years. We were doing okay. We just bought our first home. Like, okay, we're living the American dream, middle class, whatever. Barely in California in the Bay Area. But yeah, sperm is really expensive. So we were living in um, the Bay Area at the time in Oakland, and there's a sperm bank in the Bay Area in Berkeley. And my wife is white. She's her people primarily very culturally Irish. Her mom, I think it was her great grandparents who came, so she's fifth generation Irish immigrant. And so where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so for me, I wanted our baby to be some kind of brown, right? Some shade of brown. I think that was really important. Um, just for me, as I identify as a brown Indigenous, Filipino, Pacific Islander person. And I wanted that. And that was the other reason why we hyphenated our name. Lovejoy is my wife's family name, and Guron is my family name. And I always had imagined all our kids and the two of us would share this last name, and it would be our family name. And so, how could we incorporate that? We had a friend who she and her wife had started this baby making journey just about a year ahead of us, and they were felt very strongly about having a known donor and having that donor to be like part of the family, like uncle. And for us, and it luckily, I think this is why we go so well together. We didn't want to have that. That wasn't something that wasn't our thing. And so having an anonymous donor through a sperm bank was really, really important. And there aren't a lot of Filipino donors out there, just so you know. It was a struggle. But we found that there was a sperm bank in Southern California. And from there were like 3 Filipino donors in this like huge sperm bank in Southern California. Which I was relieved, and one of them was our guy. So grateful for him wherever he is. So that was a process. And I think this book that we started using, and I use it today with my clients, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, by Toni Weschler. There's been like several updates since then, but I think, I don't know where Erin got hers, but we're talking about like tracking cervical fluid, taking your basal body temperature first thing in the morning, right before you wake up. We even got the little like pee on a stick. It's you're trying to find when you're it's like they call it like your LH surge. It's just like notifying you that basically you're going to ovulate, or you have a window about a day or so. So we did all of that. She tracked several months of her cycle before we even made the appointment, just so we had kind of a little journal of what was going on with her body. This was a little over 11 years ago, right? And in California, yes. I had Kaiser, a really good insurance and a really great kind of corporate job with a big firm. And so we had great insurance. And looking back now and just seeing how some of the families in my care have a hard time finding the kind of the quality of fertility care that we got. We were covered for these fertility treatments because we were a couple who could not conceive naturally, and that's how it worked out with the insurance legalese paperwork. So all our visits were copay, right? And so we went to our first appointment. She had her little notebook of all her chartings, from like tracking, day one is your the first day of your period. That's day one, right? And she figured out, yeah, her cycle was pretty regular. I don't remember. She would remember, generally 28, 30 something days, right? Is your cycle. And then that temperature shift with the LH surge, like it was pretty on mark. And so we we didn't have to get any like fertility shots to kind of augment these inseminations. And I know some people have to go that route. Grateful we didn't, because that is like I know that can be pretty stressful. Um, so I remember, this is what I remember at the time. Like a violet sperm was like 200 something a pop, right? So this is not cheap. We are shipping this from Southern California. So I was working at this architectural firm at the time, and she was working at a school. So it made sense that when it was like, oh, go time, we're gonna order, they're gonna overnight it. Oh my gosh, Rhonda says it's 700 now in Seattle. Whew. Wow, that makes me wanna look up a, like, I don't know, find a grant, because that's not sustainable. Yeah, so it's 200, yeah, because that for us it was the 200 something for the violet sperm plus the shipping cost, right? Because it came in this kind of like big rectangular box, because it comes in a tank to keep it cold. And so I received this, the receptionist called me over to the front desk. She already knew what it was. Some people knew what we were doing. And they knew that I could be called away at any time, so we could do, it's an IUI. It's a type of intrauteral insemination. And so it's a tiny catheter. It's done in clinic. It can be done at home. There's home birth midwives that come do it. For us, because it was covered on our insurance, we went through the in-clinic route, and the providers were fine. We never had any horrible experiences, but yeah, it definitely wasn't sexy, like a clinic visit. But yeah, so I run up, and I signed for my violet sperm, and I'm off to pick up my wife from work, and we go to the clinic. And what it's really interesting, because I don't know where those pictures are. I know there's a picture of me, and this is before iPhones, right? If there were smartphones, I was too cheap to get them, so we were still on our like little, I don't know, Motorola's flip phones. But there's a picture of me like being really excited with this cryo tank with a tiny violet sperm. Yeah, and so for us, different sperm banks have different policies, like you can buy so many vials to save. And they would store it for you. And so until you needed it, and then they would ship it out. For us, what we had the budget and what we could afford, we bought 3 vials to start. And Erin comes from a very fertile family. She's the eldest of 5. She never had any issues before, maybe some like heavy periods, but we were really hoping that's all we would have to purchase, the 3 vials. And so the first one, is very exciting, fingers crossed and everything. And then we wait, right? And that waiting, because you don't want to pee on a stick too early, because the hormones their hormone levels haven't, peaked enough to really show properly on an at-home test. So that I remember the waiting. And then the second one though, the second one wasn't as like celebratory, it wasn't as like giddy, but that was the one that took. And the wonderful thing with her, I was at work, she happened to be at a friend's house, and she realized that hadn't peed on a stick yet. And she peed on a stick in her bathroom, her friend's bathroom, and that's how we found out. It is really interesting, right? Like some of us have worked with pregnant people, and the thing about not telling everyone until you're three, in your second, almost past your first trimester. And we definitely, that was our intention, to kind of keep a low profile. But just because of the nature of our story, we couldn't not tell her mom. We couldn't not tell my mom. So and then from there, we couldn't not tell her siblings. So and then we could not tell some of my cousins that I was really close to. So it was a close, I don't know, what is that, like 15 people, 4, 5, yeah, like under 10 people we told when we got the positive little pregnancy indicator. And yeah, that was incredible. So what we experienced in the fertility clinic, so she was a real expert in tracking, the kind of daily things. Like she was so good at the basal body temperature in the morning. And she knew, I mean, basically, you get, you're tracking your cervical fluid. Like I could go on and on about cervical fluid. The consistency of it, like, is basically the thicker it gets as you approach your ovulation. You're just primed to be ready to accept the fertilization to happen. And we weren't very good at checking her cervix. It was always it was just it belonged in a sitcom. It was really ridiculous. Like you can sit on the toilet, put your foot on the bathtub and see. It's just, that wasn't for us. It was very unsexy. I know a lot of couples can make it fun and sexy, but it was just ridiculous. So we didn't bother with that. So it was the basal body temperature and the LH surge, and knowing the windows of that, and going in clinic and doing the ultrasound with the wand, and they can see which side which ovary will release the egg when you ovulate. So it's a pretty straightforward, but like, we read books. Like I wasn't a birth worker, birth keeper. I wasn't in any of that. So we just kind of dove into into books and blogs and finding out all this stuff, and just being, having a good clinic, hospital providers to kind of guide us through this. So yeah, that was that story. You know, while she was pregnant, I kind of got obsessed. I read everything. And maybe that was like my ancestors, like starting to whisper about this like birth keeping future I had that I didn't know of, right? I just kept shushing that away, but I just read and read and read. I So she didn't, she would never, she never did any of that. I think she didn't have too much of a, she was nauseous in her first trimester. Pretty standard, pregnancy, nothing major. But yeah, I was kind of obsessed. And I think that was my way of, okay, I'm not carrying. What does that mean for me? Right? I'm clearly a parent. I'm clearly, now we have a term. I know the term non-gestational parent. Um, and I clearly identify as mom, for me. And so my journey was, what does that brand of mothering look like when I'm growing a baby, right? And so that might have been a tad overcompensating with like obsessing on reading all of the books and articles and kind of becoming an expert on all of that. And then reporting back to Erin, and she's just patiently listening, and she gets me. She knew who she married. Um, but yeah, it was quite the whirlwind, and I I'm really grateful that I really, there was no conflict of I wanted to be pregnant, because I didn't want to be pregnant. Like that was very clear in my body at the time. But I wanted to help grow this child somehow, right? And so for me, that looked like reading all of the books, and reading about child development, pregnancy anatomy, and reporting back to her. Um, and we did the things like I tell all the families in my care, sing to your baby, talk to your baby, how they know our voices. And to this day, our kids, they each have a song, and we would sing them their songs while they were growing, and they know their songs. And I think that's pretty special. So I encourage folks, you have that one song, and you just sing it and sing it, and after they're born, they know it's their song. Um, so so that was that. I could kind of go on about the birth part. Well, you know what? This is important as a queer family. And again, I'll tell this part. My wife's a writer, and she took a writing course. Um, she did her graduate work in creative writing, and there was an assignment she had to do. It was like write out a comic. It was like 6 or 8 panels, really simple. Draw it out and write the dialogue of like a kind of a jarring experience. And she decided to write. It was basically the night we went into labor and went to the hospital. So we were running in. Her labor was like intense. She was probably in active labor, nearing transition at the time, as I was parking the car, and she went ahead and went in through the ER because it was in the middle of the night. And I get to the security guard, because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, I just parked the car. I got the bags. My wife went in just ahead of me. And so let me in. And he was like, very nice man. Oh, your sister? And I was like, I was about to lose it. I might have said a bad word. No, my effing wife, and he's like, oh, okay, we let him in. And it was it was just like kind of classic. But yeah, and that was, again, like for me, like, how do I birth this baby, or how do I participate in the birth of this baby without actually birthing the baby? And that was like an interior and an inside job for me. um but yeah, it's yeah. And then he was born, and he was perfect, right? We were tired, and nursing, Erin's nursing journey was difficult, but she persevered, and they nursed for a little over 2 years. It was wonderful. um yeah, and our big kid, he's 11 now, um and he's perfect. um yeah, middle school is next year. So here's the funny thing about sperm banks, right? um we ended up, I think, I said it was the the sperm bank in Southern California, 200 something bucks a pop. So, oh yeah, so not only did you pay for the vials, but you pay for the storage. So that maybe that 700 a pop now, maybe that includes storage fees. I don't know.
Actually, I was wrong, and I just double checked the Seattle Cryobank, and it's gone up to $985, not counting if you want to read about the donor, and it's like 1,100 plus if you want a known donor, like if you want to know if for them to not be anonymous. So yeah, that's
Wow.
insanity.
That is not okay. Like, can we say gatekeeping on that? I can't. Yeah, that's really hard. That is not sustainable. Um, oh gosh, it makes me want to cry, Rhonda. That's not okay. So yeah, that was that. And so these sperm banks, somehow they know, because 2 years later, almost on the dot, we get an email. Erin gets an email from the sperm bank, like, oh, donor, I don't remember the number. If I called her right now, she probably could remember the number, 0625. He's retiring. And I wonder if they have it kind of like as a schedule, like they just to get people back in. Is retiring, which means that this person is no longer donating. And so if you want more of their sperm, you better reserve them now. Um, and Erin, bless her, she's just like, I felt really called to carry our first baby. And I am very clear right now that I am not called to carry our second baby. And we think about that, and we laugh about it. And she's like, I don't regret anything. She doesn't regret carrying. But she's just like, she did it. She's done. She's good. And just having that conversation and kind of laughing about, the sales pitch of the sperm bank and how well they know their customers. It just planted a seed, right? And it was I wasn't quite 35 yet, but it was like a few months I was going to be 35. And it really planted a seed. By that time we live here in Seattle now. At that time we moved in 2011 from the Bay Area in California. And we were in a very different financial situation in 2011 compared to 2010, 2009. And but as that seed was planted through that email, those whispers, like, I was feeling like I was called to carry your second baby. And I had that fear of it was going to be too expensive. um Seattle is very expensive. um and I talk through this with just about every family I work with as a full spectrum birth keeper doula. When you have two incomes, before you have your babies, it's fine, right? We can kind of get by living paycheck to paycheck. Then you have a baby and see how expensive childcare is. Particularly for us in the work she did, in the work she does, it just wasn't going to work. Like, working part-time for some teaching gig, some tutoring gig, it was just like we were just going to be throwing our money to someone else who was going to be with our baby 10 hours a day, and that just did not feel right. And so she's based primarily was the stay-at-home parent while I worked full time. And that was fine, but yeah, like, looking up, and I think at the time that in the 2.5 years or two almost 2 years between inseminations, the price didn't change much, at least from what I saw. It was about 200 to a little over, maybe just under 300 at the time. And that we found, I mentioned earlier that my wife is primarily, like culturally Irish. There was a donor at the Seattle sperm bank, who was actually from Ireland. And you read the stats, like I they have such elaborate packages now. Then it was like anonymous donor. You have kind of their basic stats, their eyes, hair, height, weight, that kind of thing. We didn't pay extra for the baby picture, none of that nonsense. Um, and but yeah, but whatever we read in this man's profile, it was perfect. And so we were able to get that donor for our younger kid. I really wanted a home birth. I really wanted a home birth, especially after all that reading, with Aaron's pregnancy. And even to this day, in the state of California, home birth is not covered. It's all out of pocket. And I've had to research because we had a client move back to California, and I was, helping her do that research. And that's a real bummer. I'm grateful that that home birth midwifery care is covered in state insurance here in Washington. And so at the time, the one midwife I found who did inseminations and fertility care, Dr. Chanel Roberts. She's a naturopathic doctor in Green Lake. She's no longer catching babies. She's got a thriving practice, it seems. But at the time, she covered fertility care and midwifery. And so just having that experience with Erin tracking her cycles, I did the same. For me, it just it took saying it out loud that I wanted to carry our next baby. And I did. I said it out loud to my wife. I said it out loud to my mom. I said it out loud to a few of our close friends. And it was I was in that decision. I was living in it. I was swimming in it. And I was really excited to carry. And so one of the biggest things that I think it's important to talk about, I am a full-figured woman. And there's just so much fat shaming and fat phobia. And I wanted to find a provider who, wasn't going to blame any fertility issues on extra weight on my body. That was clear. And I'm really grateful that Chanel provided that kind of care for us, because she never said anything. I mean, we talked about different things I could do, but it was never about losing an X amount of weight, and so I'm grateful for that. I think that's really important. But yeah, I tracked for several months before we made the appointment with her. And I did the same, taking charge of your fertility methods. Peed on the LH sticks and, got the little window of insemination. Now the neat thing, and they might be doing this now, Seattle Sperm Bank, is maybe in specific, maybe they work with specific home birth midwives, is they delivered without charge to the clinic. So that was nice. And it's all local, right? So we just met we went to the clinic, and the sperm was there or en route. And for me, it only took one try. And I know for so many it takes more tries. And with that kind of price tag that Rhonda was just sharing with us, I could see how known donors can be a better option. Because yeah, I can't. That's a lot. That's a lot. But yeah, I got pregnant in the first round, and I know certain banks have different like sell back options where the vials you didn't use, you can, you basically get a refund, but it's not 100%, it's partial. Maybe I don't even want to give you a percentage. Definitely you're not going to get what you paid for it. You might get some of it back. And so yeah, that was nice. With that, and my pregnancy was very difficult. You know comparing that non-gestational experience of like, wanting to participate without actually growing this baby, I feel like I paid for it in like double or triple. I had hyperemesis, which, or HG is this like that thing that happens to some pregnant people where you're basically nauseous and morning sickness throughout your entire pregnancy. I had that. um it was very debilitating. I basically had to not work. I couldn't do my job. I mean, basically every time I moved, I needed to throw up. And if there was nothing to throw up, I would just gag and be miserable, and just nauseous, like anytime I was awake. Um, so that was really difficult. Um, but I think I kind of glossed over that non-gestational parenting, and I'm feeling it now. So the when our eldest, our 11-year-old, he was very attached to my wife. And especially, they had such a the beginning was rough, but once they got the hang of nursing, he's very attached, and they nursed for a little over 2 years. um During that time, it was just hard when, he would cry and he'd reach for her, and I had that like my brand of mothering, this fierce love of like, oh, I can comfort you, but he didn't want me, you know. Now, I mean, even then I knew it was developmentally appropriate, right? Like that's just what you would expect. And I have that knowledge now, in the work I do in helping the non-gestational parent, right? But but at the time it was really difficult. I'd have evenings of just kind of quietly crying myself to sleep because I couldn't comfort him, Um, and then I got pregnant, and you know, he was a toddler, so um towards the end, when I was really, really sick, um, he would come into my room, you know, and kind of rub on my belly, and we'd talk and we'd sing, and we'd, watch our little shows. And I think that was really special. I hold those memories really dear. He would talk to his brother, right? Because I told him, he's growing in here. And he'd use my belly button like a microphone. So he'd speak right into the belly. Um, and I don't know if that is the case for some families, but like I feel like that last trimester of my pregnancy, there was something that opened up for him that was like, and then it was developmentally appropriate, is when kids, too, they kind of start looking outside of their gestational parent. So yeah, so then he would come to me because he wanted to be comforted by me, and that was really, really special as I was growing his brother. um and he was also, I can't help but talk about him, but because his brother wasn't ever like this. He would do things like when he drew a picture, he would have all of the crayons, and like he'd get just the right shade of brown for him, right? Like he would get a little bit of peach and a little bit of like kind of light brown, and he'd mix it in. It's like a 2-year old. Um, and so he strongly identified with my brownness, knowing like he was a part of me, even though technically he wasn't, but obviously he is. Um, but so that was really special, and it I think he's just a sensitive kid that way. How are we doing on time? 3:46. We're good. So yeah, so there we were. I had this gestational, I had the hyperemesis, and then I developed gestational diabetes. So I couldn't have that home birth. So we did a transfer to the UW clinic. Had a good experience at UW. I did consent to a 39-week induction. Um, excuse me, which if I knew what I knew now, I might not have. But at the time, it was really, a very difficult pregnancy. Um, and it was not the shortest of inductions, but it was a nice and slow induction, which I appreciate now, knowing what I know now. They allowed me to move, and as soon as once labor got going, there were no issues. um, I remember to this day, our nurse, at the time, and I appreciate nurses like her, especially in the work I do. Um, you know, the external monitoring belt was not cutting it, especially because I was moving. I was all over the room. I was in the tub, out of the tub, on the ball, squatting. I was everywhere, and active and transition parts of labor. I would look down, and there she was. She had oh my the little tracking thing on my belly to track baby's heart rate. And she did. She followed me everywhere I go. And I remember we had doulas. We had doulas for both our babies. And again, that's like I talk about the ancestors whispering, because the doula we had for Aaron, oh, I can't believe I didn't tell this story. I think I emphasized kind of how obsessed I was with getting pregnant, and then once she got pregnant, about learning about everything. So what I did, I knew about how to find a doula. There was Doula Match then, doulamatch.net. I didn't know about any you know BIPOC doulas or any of those collectives that I can certainly find now. Um, but yeah, we scheduled, I think it was a 10 doulas interviews over Saturday and Sunday. And it was, yeah, I look back and it's so ridiculous, how overboard I was. But I wanted us to find the right one, and in the right, affordable price range. The doula we hired, she was so wonderful, Tanya. She was Indigenous too. I think I think it wasn't Mexico. It was maybe it was Mexico, but she was really lovely. Um, she held us so well during Aaron's labor. She'd look at me and she'd be like, "You haven't peed in a while. Go pee. You're not drinking enough water." And, she really took care of us. And I remember, as Aaron was like just mowing through transition, almost ready to push, she would just tell her, just bring it back to the earth. Just be rooted in the earth. And she held on to her tight. For our doula, and again, had I known about Open Arms, and I know they were around in 2013, I didn't know about them. I wish I was able to get an Open Arms doula, but I didn't. So we found this lovely lovely woman, white woman. And she was lovely. She was there. She provided, I think, two prenatals and two postnatals, and we did the interview with her. She was the only one we interviewed because she was the only one that had the rate we could afford. Um, and so she met us at the hospital, because it was an induction. We just called her when things got going. Um, and she came, and so yeah, as I was just kind of laboring all over the room, I kind of come to, and the nurse would have her thing on my belly to track baby's heart rate. I'd have my head. I just remember my head was in Aaron's like abdomen and breast, and I was just like, I just needed that cushion on my head, and I could like rock with the contractions. And our doula was somewhere, massaging my back or something. And we just did that for a few hours. And yeah, it was amazing. I think that experience really shaped, and like my future kind of venturing into birth work several years later, um how important it was to have someone else there, to have another set of eyes. I remember at one point they wanted me to be on the bed because I was starting to push, and they were trying to get me in this other position, and I was saying like I didn't want to get in that position in some like kind of weirdly polite way. And our doula was like, she said she didn't want to be in that position. She just kind of repeated what I said. Um and and i and to this day, Erin remembers that because she didn't know what to say, in that kind of medical setting. And gosh, I'm so grateful for this woman to like kind of show me like this is how you can, help. Um but yeah, so it was like, having and then having a toddler and having a newborn. Um that's 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 another story, I think. I think for us, I do want to talk about kind of like the legal aspect of queering this fertility story. So let's talk about that. One of the reasons why we wanted to have an anonymous donor was, we didn't want any gray areas as far as, who were parents of these babies. Like it was always clear we were, the moms, the parents of these babies. Um, and yes, that one couple, our friends in Oakland, who wanted to have this, kind of, shared family, with their friend, as a known donor. That was a great story. It worked well for them. Now I've since heard lots of stories where it hasn't worked well, and whether or not you take those legal actions to protect yourself, um, it was still too hard of a risk for us. Like, you can write up all the contracts, you can hire a good lawyer, which we couldn't afford, right? Um, and so, yeah, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why we went to the track of an anonymous donor. From the beginning, um, we've always taught our children, how they were made. That was never a question of like, how do we tell them? Like, we would just tell them, you know. Um, even before I did the work I do now, it's like, I tell Evan, I say, you were an egg and a sperm cell, and they met in mama's belly. Aaron's mama, I'm mommy. Um, and where did that other cell come from? The egg cell obviously came from mama, but the sperm cell, it came from a nice man who decided to donate and, help other families like us. create our babies. And so that was like, how much clearer can you get? And he understood it, as a 2-year old, he totally got it, especially as it was happening, with me when we were, getting pregnant with his younger brother. And so, I think some families are like, how do we tell this story? And when I share that experience, a couple right now that I'm serving, I shared that with them not that long ago, because they have family members who I know they have their opinions or whatever, a queer couple, right? And I shared that was how we told them. And that's basically what we told our family, like, there is no dad, there's never a dad. Two moms, right? There's a donor, bless him, somewhere out there. But yeah, two parents, two moms. And it's just so clear cut, and having that identity, like, to kind of live in that, oh yeah, that's all it is. It becomes easier to be able to share that with your family, however supportive or unsupportive they might be. Like, you just kind of, that you just keep that story and you hold it dear, and there isn't anything that can, take it away from you. And I say, like, if a 2-year-old can understand that, like, certainly, hopefully, some adults in your lives will be able to understand that too. Now, we were legally married, um, and that helps, right? As far as like being protected legally. Um, so 2004 when we met, and then 2006 we got married. So in California at the time, 2006, there was no legal gay marriage, right? Same sex marriage. But they did have the domestic partnership in place by then. And so that's as far as we took it. Okay. Having that in place, me being on the birth certificate as the other parent, you know, that was what we did. We also did a living trust. Living trust, that's what it's called. For our property, and basically, having all those things you would put in a will, like if something happened to both of us, you know, who would be caring for the baby, that kind of thing. And then in 2008, um, Californians were able to have same-sex marriage. So then we had another ceremony, 2008, City Hall. We basically went and did it the first day. I just left the office, went to City Hall down the street, met Aaron and a handful of our friends, and we had a nice like restaurant little reception. And then when we moved here in 2011, um, what year was it? It was, I think, that year or the year after, when there was same-sex marriage. There was the bill that passed. And so we never had to get married again, because once that bill passed, our marriage from California just kind of transferred over here. And for us, that's as far as we wanted to take it. I know there are other things, so they call it what do they call it? It's basically like a step parent adoption. And other couples choose to do that just to secure their standing in the eyes of the state and protect themselves. Also, in the unfortunate case, if their marriage or the relationship is dissolved, that adoption is in place, and the roles are clear, right? Custody and all those things. So certainly for a lot of people, that is the way to go. For us, we didn't pursue that. And I know it is bittersweet, because when you go through that, just getting the same name, the same last name, changing our last name. We basically changed our last name right after we became domestic partners, right? Um, in the eyes of California state, we did that. We did the domestic partnership, and then we had to file to do the last name change. And it was really sweet. We shared the courtroom with a trans person who was changing their name, and it was just neat to share that space with them, because we were obviously in there for different reasons but similar reasons, right? For those identifying purposes, we were identifying we are a family. And so yeah, so then that's how we had to change our last name. I don't know, what I think straight people, you get married and you just change your last name, right? Uh, for for us, we had to do this whole name change through the courts. I don't know what the case, that was a long time ago, what that case is now, how you would go about that. But yeah, so here we are. Our eldest is 11 in 5th grade. Our younger child is 8 in 3rd grade. And I think, you know, once they started preschool and kindergarten, those kind of identifiers of, okay, they are clearly mixed race. How do we protect them? How do we secure them in their identity? And I always say I want them to know um, who they're from and where they're from, right? So when they have that, like, yes, I come from my mom's people, in the islands of now referred to as the Philippines, what they were called before. But they have that indigeneity, and that they come from a rich and meaningful culture that is in their bones, right? And on the other side, they also come from the Celts and the Ireland, and they were, their identity was taken from them as well. And so they both have an awareness of that. And so bringing in the queering part, it's like, yeah, I have 2 moms. What's the big deal? And I think a lot, especially in kindergarten, when Evan was in kindergarten, he would tell us that he'd tell his friend so and so that he had 2 moms. And then later, his friend would say, I wish I had 2 moms. And so that whole, at least for them, from what I know, and how we parent, there was never a question of like they were missing anything. And I tell them now, I say, remember those nice men who donated their sperm cells so we can make you, when you're 18, and if you are curious about them, we can call the sperm bank and say, hey, we need help contacting this person. Could you ask them if we could, contact them? Because I also tell them we could do that, and then the men can say, no, we don't want to have contact, and then that would be the end of the story. And as far as we are now, like that's they're it's not happening, but they know, that's a part of their story. And once they turn 18, if they want to know more, like, we'll support that. um yeah, yeah. And then I guess now, as our 11-year-old is kind of nearing, kind of this like prepubescent pubescent stage, I want him to know his body, just as this fertility thing, charting, knowing all of this kind of lingo, and just knowing how ovaries and your fallopian tubes and the uterine wall and all of those things. Like, you don't have to be a birth keeper to be aware of what's going on. And same thing for their health. I think they know that they can come and ask me questions. I have all the books we read through, we talk about. The other night, a few months ago, um, our 11-year-old, the kids' bedrooms is right next to our bed, so we can just kind of talk through the wall. And it was like, half hour after, we sent them to bed. And he's like, Mommy, yes? He's like, he had a question. He was thinking, he hadn't fallen asleep yet. And he was basically asking the difference between gender and sexuality, right? And I was like, oh, buddy, that's such a good question. Let's talk about that in the morning. And so the next day, I looked up the genderbread, I just genderbread. If you don't never heard about it, it's awesome. It kind of just goes through all the difference between gender and sexuality and gender expression, right? And so we went through all the little things, and it's on a spectrum, and we were doing it so he could see like where he fell on all those spectrums, and that was really special. I was like, oh, it's starting. He's starting to think about it, because he was like, yeah, it's just, that's his story. I don't want to tell his story, but I think it's been a real special journey, especially doing the work now, and I can share my experience of like, and our story is our story. I think just like queering that fertility story is important, especially not hearing enough Indigenous voices. I think that's important. Got to brown it up. So, gosh, Rhonda, I feel like that's all I have. Is there anything?
That was one of the things that came out though. So I'm like, we need to make campaigns for, more POC to go donate this farm.
Yeah, got there. Yeah, 3 Filipino donors in Southern California at the time. One in the Bay Area at Berkeley's sperm bank, and that was like something. There was an issue with that one because it was like limited quantity. It was just like, oh gosh, yeah, it's really hard. And native sperm out there, I know is really hard to find. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
Have your kids ever asked about just that a lot of times people have siblings, even if there's donors, but they have, shared genetics between the two of them. Is that ever like a topic of conversation or a realization?
Yes, no, I actually remember the moment it dawned on our elder kid, and so these conversations are usually in late at night where he's thinking about these things, or we're like in the car on the way to school. Okay, and then in this moment that I'm about to share, we were on our way to school, and maybe he was in 2nd grade, where he was asking about DNA, right? And he's very close to my parents. He's very close to his other grandparents, my wife's parents. And what I always say, like, you come from our island people, you may not share our DNA, but we're of the same group of islands. And he said something about DNA, and then he had that realization that like he and his brother did not share that little DNA, visual he had in his mind, that they didn't share any. And then I was like, but he's your brother. He's like, well, yeah, he's my brother. And I was like, how do you feel about that? Does it make you sad, or is it like whatever? And he's like, yeah, he's my brother. Like there's nothing, there's no arguing that he's not his brother, But yeah, it was like a hold my breath moment, and like, pray to the ancestors that whatever comes out of my mouth is the right things that I needed to say. And it was fine.
What about things like, 23andMe or like those sorts of curiosities about DNA?
Yeah, they haven't asked that. And I have feelings about those types of things, right? Um, yeah, I know there are those kind of directories where you can find siblings. They call them dibblings, right, Rhonda? Donor siblings. Um, because I know some folks that I've made connections, virtual connections with other queer families, and they've sought that out to find their children's siblings. We have not sought that out. It hasn't come up. It doesn't mean it won't. Um, but yeah, I find that curious, and I understand wanting to seek that. That has not come up for us. Um, yeah, I don't know what that says about us, but I guess I was just so fiercely protective of like, this is our family, and that's that. Um, but obviously if they were ever curious about it, um, I I would we would discuss that and we can pursue it if that was something that was important to them.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we are going to wrap up for the day. Any closing thoughts before I press end?
Um, no, I just think that it's important to tell the story, and for folks who are in King County and who identify as Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, if you are seeking help with your fertility, full spectrum doula means the full reproductive spectrum. So Hummingbird Indigenous doulas, which is what I'm a part of. We can serve you. And you can contact me, Vanessa at indigenousdoulas.org, or find us on Facebook or Instagram, Hummingbird Indigenous Doulas. Um, yeah, we could help you. And once you're pregnant, we can continue that and be your birth doula, lactation help, postpartum. Um, yeah, you have to live or birth in King County for us to serve you and identify one of those as one of those groups.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa.